Hey everyone, going to do things a little bit differently here for a while. You guys are used to seeing me in front of the group at Beer Trap and in front of the beer wall, showing you guys some beers and tasting some things. And so I decided we're going to do a beer school kind of online. We're just going to do videos of these things and send them out. Same time we normally do beer school. So you guys have been to beer school before, you kind of know what this is all about. If you've never been, well, I'm getting ready to tell you. Beer school is basically the Beer Trap's version of a tasting. It's not exactly a class, it's not exactly there's no tests. Good thing, because I wouldn't let you pass anyway. We need you coming back so nobody can graduate. Our hashtag is never graduate. But basically it's a tasting. It's a way for me to introduce seasonal beers or themed beers or genre-driven beers that pertain to a certain style. And as the seasons go along, we try to match them up with the seasons. And we try to introduce you guys to some really nice beers that maybe you've seen us post or maybe you've seen on the wall, but you've been reluctant to try, to pay for, to take home. So it's our way of introducing new beers to you and new concepts. And it gives me an opportunity to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit more on the beer scene, pull back the curtain a little bit more on these beers and their flavors, more so than I can do when I'm just simply bartending. So today's thing is going to be spring seasonals. Spring is a really kind of a transitional time for beer. We've been cooped up largely this winter, drinking a lot of imperial stouts, pastry stouts, darker beers, richer beers, barley wines, Belgian quads, oh my. So today's beers are kind of the transitional beers. Spring seasonals have 6 beers I'm going to be talking to you guys about, a little bit about today. When it comes to spring seasonals, there's really no style, there's really no genre. It's just basically 6 different beers that brewers feel like, hey, we're trying to capture the essence of the transition of seasons. We're going from cold to a little bit on the warmer side. How are we reacting to that? What beer can we make that kind of gives customers something, a taste of that transition? So I'm going to show you guys some things that's been rolling into the Beer Trap here in the last little bit that we're proud of selling, and we can do more of. So the original spring seasonals were beers like Doppelbocks, beers that were really designed to sustain the monks during Lent. Of course, we're in the middle of a Lent period right now where people are giving up a lot of things. Those monks would give up food, so they needed calorie-rich beer to help sustain them during the Lent season. So the Doppelbock has traditionally been a really strong seasonal beer. We did Doppelbock Beer School last week, so whoever came into that for that last beer school we were going to do for a little while was really kind of neat. We got into that style really hot and heavy, talked about a lot of really cool stories then. But largely, this is a season where Easter's coming up. So a lot of breweries are taking advantage of a little bit more of a floral, a little bit more of a lighter kind of fare. Some brewers are trying to do things like create a richer, heavier beer, but still give an essence of spring in some sort of way. So we're going to cover those bases a little bit more today with the beers we've selected for you. So first of all, one of the newer beers that just came through was the Merlot. This is by Urban Artifact, new beer, and of course we're not going to be drinking them today, so you're going to listen to me talk about it a little bit. It'll be just like drinking it yourself, I promise. Merlot is a really neat beer because it really does capture the flavor of Merlot particularly well. Whenever I taste this, they call it a Brut Fruit Tart Ale. Really what it means is a beer that just tastes like grapes. It has a little bit more of a wine influence than it does anything else. And those wine flavors are starting to get something a little drier than maybe a malt-driven beer. It has a little bit more of a tartness to it, but I would not call it a full-blown sour. Whenever I tasted this the other day, I felt like it was a little bit more of a Flanders Red type of beer without the complexity of the oak. But the fruit flavors really do kind of shine. You get that tartness. There's some hints of balsamic in this beer that I really thought were really enjoyable, really depth. The depth on this is pretty good and fairly complex. So I really do like this one quite a bit. Thing I love about this beer, $3.49 price tag, 13% alcohol. Comes in this cute little 8-ounce can, so it's actually quite nice. It's actually packaged like some canned wines do right now, so I like this one particularly well. Another beer that come through that I've really enjoyed having, of course, IPAs are always, there's always an IPA for every season out there. There's never a time that IPAs are not popular. Decadent Ales is a brewery from the Northeast, and whenever they say Decadent Ales, they mean it. If they're going to make an IPA, it's going to be a sweeter, richer, heavier, much more lavish, much more decadent sort of an IPA. And so they made the Mocha Latte IPA. It's a really neat kind of beer as well. What really makes this one stand out is you read the words Mocha, you think dark. But when you pour this thing, it pours like an IPA. It pours somewhere in the neighborhood of like a blonde or a straw or a slightly copperized kind of color, which is quite nice. But it does have this really strong coffee, latte, vanilla, sweeter kind of notes as well. So it really has a nice job of really balancing out those flavors, those characteristics quite well. It's a heavier beer. This one comes in at an alcohol content of 8% alcohol. So it dabbles on that line that I call an imperial beer. In other words, a beer that has stronger characteristics than maybe other beers. So 8% is usually your cutoff when you go from dry, crisp, refreshing beers to something a little bit more lavish, something a little bit more of a sipper of a beer. And Imperial IPAs that dance on that 8% alcohol line do exactly that. So I like that one because it does have this blonde, hoppy, a little bit more of a bitter kind of characteristic, but it has some of those really lavish kind of flavors you get from winter. Think a little bit more dessert-like or coffee-like on that one. One of the staples that's been around for quite a while and is going to come back this year is Great Lakes. Great Lakes Brewing Company does a really nice job with their seasonal beers, and their Chill Wave is an Imperial IPA, full-blown IPA. No coffee, no gimmicks, no nothing with this beer. Your full-bodied IPA. It meets this season of spring particularly well because it has this hoppy, bright, floral flavors that you really want in IPA. It really does signal something like a spring or a summertime characteristic, but it's got the alcohol that's actually quite high. This also is an 8%er, 9%. It comes in at 9%. So it's a little on the stronger side, and so for those cool nights like we're going to experience tonight, a little bit more of a warming sensation in the back of the throat. It has this almost a gin-like characteristic when you combine the flavors of the alcohol, the floral hops, as they kind of converge. It gives me this almost like a gin and tonic kind of refreshment characteristic. But it is a strong beer, so if those warm or those cold nights you need a warm beer to kind of keep you moving, this beer will do exactly that. One of the beers we always do for our spring seasonal beer school is the Boskuin. This is De Dole Brewery. This is a very classic, strong Belgian blonde ale from Belgium. It's got a bunny rabbit on the label, so of course it's going to meet spring particularly well. And it does the same thing that the IPA did. This is a stronger beer, dabbling in around 9% alcohol. Has a lot of the same characteristics of a triple, but it's a strong golden ale. Very firm malt backbone, but it is Pilsner malt, so it has this lightness that maybe like you would expect in a lager and flavor profile, but it's got the body of something a little richer, a little heavier without being too out of whack. It's a very crisp, clean, refreshing beer with a lot of floral characteristics. Belgian beer, we always know that those are very popular because it has this really delicate balance of fruit and spices. Brewers in Belgium, they feel like if they treat their yeast so nice, the fruit is going to give those natural flavors of fruit and spice. They actually don't add any of those to the beer making process. So they feel like if they can get the proper characteristic of the yeast the way they want, they get that floral characteristic, that fruity characteristic from the yeast, and it also balances with some of these little spicier characteristics that reminds you a little bit maybe of a white wine, and it's a very mild acidity that plays off the yeast in these kind of beers as well. When you look at a beer from Belgium, if a beer pours golden like this one does, then the fruit flavors you can expect are exactly that. They're light fruit flavors. So you think of things like apple, lemon, maybe some pear characteristics coming through. You can get those flavors are really prominent. The spices again are kind of lighter characteristic spices. You can think of cumin, you can think of clove, you can think of coriander, you think of some of those spices coming through, and the brewers from Belgium want you to think that there's none of those things added to the beer. The truth is they're probably adding a little bit of spiciness to make the balance work for them, and that's okay as long as you can't really put your finger on what kind of spices they're using. If they use several different kind of spices and a low-lying characteristics or low level amount of additions where you can't really recognize what the spice is, that means that they probably pull it off reasonably well. Fruits, they usually don't add any fruits. The beer is going to give you, or the yeast is going to give you the proper ester profile. You don't have to add any fruits to make the beer taste this free. But these are really nice beers. Again, it's got this really delicate floral characteristic. This is the beer that you pour and all of a sudden you start drinking and you realize I can drink these very quickly. But beware, these are strong alcohol beers, even though they have a very unassuming flavor and aroma profile. For the folks out there that see the spring coming, but they're not ready to let go of full flavor, full bodied Big Imperial Stouts, Hi-Wire's got you covered on this one. This is a fantastic beer by them. Comes shaped like an oil can. It comes decorated like an oil can. They call it a 10W40. That's their base Imperial Stout. Really nice. It has a very firm roasted characteristic, very firm body. But I won't say this is lavish. This is not a pastry stout. There's not a beer that's going to drink like a meal. It's a beer you're going to sip on a little bit, but it actually has a greater sense of drinkability because it has the alcohol content that's going to be about 8%. It acts as a thinning agent against the malt. So it really does help make the beer a little bit more drinkable. It's an American style, so it's going to have a little bit more hefty carbonated range. So that carbonation is going to lighten the body as well. It's going to make the beer seem a little bit more drinkable there. And the 8% alcohol, it dabbles on the fence between what's imperial and what's maybe a standard American stout. So when that happens, there's a sense of drinkability that comes with that too. So it's not going to be overly sweet. It's not going to be overly rich like the Decadent Ale would be. So this beer actually has some semblance of drinkability from a base stout standpoint. What makes this unique is it's decorated with vanilla, almonds, cinnamon, lactose, and chocolate. So you got some elements in there that it's going to make it seem a little bit on the richer side with the chocolate, and a little bit of the warming sensation with the cinnamon. But it's also got the vanilla, it's got the almonds, which suggests something a little lighter, a little on the softer palate. So when those flavors converge, they remind you of horchata, the Mexican drink. So it has this kind of like soft milkiness, but with the spices coming through particularly well. It has elements of lightness, even though it's a darker, richer, heavier beer. So that's a beer that's sold real well so far in the late winter season. Now that we've gotten into spring a touch, it's gotten even more popular. Capping off beer school today is Crooked Stave. We've got the Sour Cherry Nightmare on Brett Bourbon Barrel Edition. For folks that just feel like you have way too much money laying around, you need to spend some of it, this beer will help you. Crooked Stave has not been a brewery that's light on price. Normally, they do have a line of beers that's actually very affordable, but the Nightmare on Brett is their show-off beers. These are the beers that they make to kind of show how good they are at actually doing this sort of beer-making game. Is it worth the price? Is it worth the $15 price tag? Absolutely. It's really, really good. What they've done is they've taken their dark, strong Imperial Sour Ale. It's very hard to make Imperial Sour Ales, especially hard to make them taste good. What happens when you try to imperialize a sour ale, a lot of times the alcohol will get very, very strong in a sour ale, and when you get the acidity and the alcohol to converge, sometimes you get these very strong flavors of nail polish remover, super glue, just a true almost acetic kind of burn comes with that. It's almost chemical in nature, and so those things can bother the throat. They can irritate the throat, they can irritate the senses. This beer does not do that. They take this beer one step further and they age it in bourbon barrels and throw copious amounts of cherries on top of that. When those things happen, it just opens up the world of complexities. This beer, even though it's a stronger beer, it is Imperial status, clocking in at 11.2% alcohol. I do think this is almost a single serving kind of beer. I enjoy drinking it because every sip, as my palate acclimated to its strength, I started receiving the secrets of the beer a little bit more, and as the beer kind of warmed up and came up to temperature, it started revealing more flavor. So this is harmony between what was happening on the tongue and the dialogue with the beer was starting to really open up. And so every beer had a new flavor, had a new aroma, had a new characteristic. The mouthfeel changed. Everything changed about the beer with each and every sip. And whenever we encounter a beer like that, that means we can ensure it has a high level of complexity. That's usually how we define complexity, is that does the beer change and change for the pleasant reasons as the duration of the session goes along. And Crooked Stave Nightmare on Brett does exactly that. So that's the 6 beers that we would have tasted today for beer school if you guys were in-house. But since we couldn't, we did this virtual beer school today. I usually do a recap at the end to kind of see what beers people like the best, see what their favorite were, see what they didn't like, and I make fun of them and tell them how wrong they are. So I enjoy doing that, and I'm sorry I can't do that face-to-face with you right now. But this is something I plan on continuing. I went a little bit long today. My goal was to create a 10-minute beer school, so we're going to go into 15 minutes a little bit. But I do want to tell you what the plan is for beer school going along. I plan on doing these every Sunday. Beer school is usually at 6 o'clock. We're going to continue doing beer school at 6 o'clock. I'll release these videos with you every Sunday at 6 o'clock. I'm going to try to get the word out ahead of time of what beers we're going to do. So if you want me to package these beers up and sell to you ahead of time, I can do that. I want to keep this video up for 1 week. And if you want to come in and buy these beers and take them home with you and revisit this this video, then feel free to do that. If you have any questions, please address me here, or you can come into the store. We can talk. Just to make sure we keep it 6 feet apart and make sure we don't get in groups of 10 or more. So let's keep that alive. Let's keep the camaraderie going. Lexington, you've done a great job of embracing the beer community. You've done a great job embracing our story, and you've done a great job supporting beer school over time. And I just want to keep that going. You guys have a great day, and stay in, stay safe, and let's get well soon. Thank you.